This is my introduction to Sailing Wilson on YouTube. I'm Captain Wannabe Ian. Yes, I do have a sailing certificate. In fact, I have two. Whether I can sail or not is another story. I own a 2013 Island Spirit catamaran, 38 foot in length, and I really love my boat. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people you know. I'm currently on the hard stand at Reback Island Shipyard, which is in the top middle of the photograph. Reback Island is a resort island just off the main island of Langkawi in Malaysia. Here's a Google Earth image of my boat just beside the blue dot on the hard stand, and here's a photograph of my boat just after I finished putting the copper coat on. I've still got a lot of work to do. This video is about repairing old damage and abrading the copper coat. My haul out progress report, part 36. We started off the day by sanding out the old damage. Here's a video of me sanding off some of the old damage and preparing it for filler. I've said it a dozen times, but the air compressor and the air tools made everything much easier, and I'd recommend people spend the extra money and then cut their workload by half or even more. I sanded off the dog cowlings that cover the drain holes for the anchor locker and the storage lockers on the bow of the boat. Then I did some epoxying with woven matte fiberglass to fill in the deeper holes, and here I am patting down the first layer of woven matte. And then I put on two more layers of woven matte, so 3 layers altogether. And you can see that there was a lot of runniness with the epoxy, and I had to clean that up all the time. I'm not a professional, so it takes a bit of time, and you can see that I shake a lot, and that makes it even more difficult. Then we went around and applied the cross filler to all the dings and dents and damage around the boat. Missed a few, but got it right. And you can see I'm using a spatula, and I gave up on the spatula on some areas and used the fingers of my hand and the back of my hand, and also my big fat thumb and the thumb worked a treat. And here I am using a spatula on the side of the boat to fill little cracks before we sanded and painted it off. And this wasn't that easy for me, and yes, it was difficult. So the next day, once the cross fill had dried, I sanded back all the filler to get a nice even finish, and as you can see that it turned out okay. This one not so much. It took a lot of filler and it took a lot of sanding to get this flat and even. We'd left the 3M blue tape on too long and the stickiness stuck to the side of the boat. Then we went about sanding and painting the bow cross member, and there was some nicks and damage in that. And after a lot of effort, sanding and filler and more sanding, we finally got round to spray painting. And here you can see I'm using a small pot so that the overspray was much less than the larger pot that I have, and it was much easier to deal with. So here's the final coat on one of the smaller areas that had some overspray of epoxy that was cleaned up, and then I sprayed the nicks and damage on the port bow, and that turned out okay. Still a little bit of work to be done, but no, the job's finished for me for the next time I run into something. So then I sprayed that small crack that was on the port side bow, and that was a lot of mucking around for such a small crack. Here's a lesson for you: don't run over a fish trap flag, it'll tear a hole in the bottom of your boat. So here's the finished job, ready for the second coat. And likewise this was ready for the second coat. You can see the shine once you get on the right angle, a little bit of imperfection. Likewise here, but it looked good. And this was the final coat, and you can see the comparison between the two areas. I was comfortable with the job I did for an amateur. And here is the final coat, and you can see the shine and the slight imperfection, but I didn't bother about. Here is the first coat, and then there's the second coat. And again, this is the finished job, but I touched up some blue on the decals that had scratches, and that turned out okay. Not perfect, but okay. So once the copper coat that was painted on where the stands were had time to cure, it was time to abrade it. And abrading is taking away some of the epoxy finish and getting the copper flakes to shine out of it, so that the copper reacts with the barnacles and kills them off and stops them growing. And here you can see me using a product called Scotch Brite, and the idea behind this is it's non-intrusive and it abrades the product, but it didn't quite get deep enough. It was good for the valleys, but didn't quite get deep enough for my satisfaction. Here's the retail packaging and the pads that were cut in half, and here you can see by hand they weren't effective. Even with the air sander, it didn't quite satisfy me, so I ended up using a 120 grit without applying any pressure on the air sander, and went over and abraded the copper coat right around the whole boat and underneath the keels and the rudders, and I was more than happy with that. Might have been a little bit too aggressive, but we'll see in the long run whether the finished product will be effective after a month of being in the water. See whether the barnacles stick to it or keep off it. So every fortnight or 3 weeks maximum, I'll run around with the Scotch Brite with my hooker breathing gear and dive in and abrade the surface. And if I don't use the Scotch Brite, I'll use a heavy sponge pad. So here's the finished job, and I took this video at the end of the day with the sun setting, and you can see the shine on the exposed copper, which is the product that will keep the barnacles, kill off the barnacles that want to grab hold and cause problems with the hole underneath the waterline. Here's a better angle of the whole side of the port side of the boat, and as you can see, I did a fairly aggressive job, and I'm happy with what I did. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of the repair of old damage and abrading the copper coat just before I splashed the boat. The haul out progress report part 36, and I hope you enjoyed the video.